Stephen Kenzer once said, alliances and partnership produce stability when they reflect realities and interests. Keep this in mind as I discuss today Saudi Arabia's interests in joining BRICS and how this may be the end of the petrodollar. My name is Dr. David Walalu, and you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
South African president announced that Saudi Crown Prince expressed the kingdom's interest in joining
Two
BRICS.
countries have applied for membership, Iran and Argentina.
The BRICS countries group says it is looking to expand for the first time in 12 years.
Most of the global trade is done in one currency, the US dollar. But Russia and China are looking to break the dollar's dominance.
And so we did say to them, the BRICS nations are going to be meeting in a summit next year under the chairship of South Africa, and the matter is going to be under consideration.
So before I delve deeper into this topic, I want to say thank you for your support. And please, if this is your first time, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification button so you will be notified every time we upload a brand new video. So let's dive into this. The BRICS alliance is preparing to welcome new members, including Saudi Arabia, whose potential admission will have a significant implication for the global geopolitical balance and the financial system. BRICS, which stand for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is a merger of the economic powerhouses of those countries I just mentioned. And here is what happened. Earlier this year, Argentina and Iran applied for the full BRICS membership. Yeah, let that sink in. While Indonesia and Algeria also expressed interest in joining the bloc. During a visit which happened about a week ago or so to Saudi Arabia, recently, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa stated after meeting with the Crown Prince in BS, he stated that Saudi Arabia is willing to join BRICS. Because here's the thing. Next BRICS meeting will be held in South Africa. And recently, the foreign ministers from Brazil, Russia, India, and China extended their full support to South Africa for its BRICS chairmanship, which will be in 2023, and for holding the 50th summit. So this is a protocol that they have to agree upon, the prime ministers, in the agenda for when the head of states or those members of the BRICS meet in South Africa next year. So, well, one thing is sure that I want you to be aware of is that Saudi Arabia joining BRICS will mean a significant change in the countries that form the bloc. And this is according to Ramaphosa statements. So the BRICS, basically the BRICS nations, are going to be meeting in a summit, as I mentioned, next year under the chairmanship of South Africa. And the matter is going to be under consideration. So which matter are we talking about? Is a reference to possibility of admission of Saudi Arabia into the club. And without naming names of the countries, the South African president, Ramaphosa, revealed that there are several countries that have been making sort of approaches to join the BRICS, which represents about 40% of the global population. Let that sink in and think about it from an economic perspective. A 40% of a consuming market just within this BRICS countries, that is. So over the past year, just to let you know, Argentina and Iran have applied for BRICS full membership. And as I said earlier, Algeria has also expressed interest in joining the bloc. Well, why is this important? Because can you imagine, you add in Iran, you add in Algeria, and you add in Saudi Arabia, three major OPEC members, which is OPEC stands for oil exporting producing countries, in addition to Russia. So you got four countries within the club that are major oil producers. then within the same club, which is BRICS in this case, you have, in addition to Brazil and South Africa, you have China and India. What do they share in common? Large consuming markets. And this is where the importance of BRICS comes in, specifically from an energy perspective. So as I said, Algeria has expressed interest in joining the BRICS. In addition to BRICS, you have now the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, is also trying to get Saudi Arabia to join it. So both alliances, the BRICS and the SCO, are keen to support alternatives to Western structures, for example, in monetary and banking systems. This is why I say, when Saudi Arabia joined BRICS and decided to dump the petrodollar, how that's going to impact the global financial system, because most of the oil transactions around the world are conducted in a dollar, except for those countries that now decided to sort of transact in their own currencies. So, like, for example, between Iran and China. So here's the thing. The BRICS and the SCO have an important ideological commonality. They share a common bond here, ideologically speaking. And that is, they are both oriented towards a multipolarity, and their summit meetings were even sometimes held together at the same time. That tells you, again, they are aware of the shift in the geopolitical landscape from a unipolar to a multipolar. So the multipolar approach of the BRICS should be of a particular interest to Saudi Arabia. And this is why Saudi Arabia has maintained close ties, even though Saudi Arabia has maintained close ties with Washington for many decades. In recent years, Saudi Arabia has struggled to become an independent global player and has since expanded ties with both Russia and China. And what you need to also understand is that with the election of Lula da Silva in Brazil, and Brazil is one of the major players in the BRICS, you can just see where things are headed. And this is why the Saudis have decided to do exactly that. I remember I wrote an article a few years ago and I mentioned about this trend, and I will provide you the link to that. So China's also invitation to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to join the BRICS confirms that the kingdom plays an important role in building the new world and order, that is, from an energy perspective, and also highlights how important and a major player Saudi Arabia can be on the global trade and economy. And here is what I'm going to be focusing on in this particular video here, specifically about about finance and energy. Newsweek is reporting that the shocking facts that Saudi Arabia is now openly declaring the nation will effectively drop the petrodollar status for the dollar and embrace world currencies. Let that sink in for a moment. Even joining the BRICS nations that include Russia and China. So Saudi Arabia and China, for example, are close to a deal for China to pay for oil sales with yuan. And I remember I've been talking about this for quite a while. While a deal between Saudi Arabia and China wouldn't spell the end of the king dollar immediately, the ability to leverage the Chinese yuan into petro contracts would help regimes in countries like Iran, Russia, and China avoid US sanctions, because US sanctions will become useless. So this comes, of course, on the heels of OPEC Plus cutting oil production by about 2 million barrels a day, which the US did not like. Well, they're going to say, who cares, right? No. I'm convinced that the emergence of an excess of oil, which consists of Russia as a major oil producer, China and India as growing consumers, and Iran, of course, as a major producer, will compel Saudi Arabia to consider its geopolitical and economic options. One of those options is whether time has come for Saudi Arabia to break away with the US, economically speaking, when considering China's biggest energy suppliers are Russia and Saudi Arabia. As to China's demand for energy continue to grow, its dependence on Saudi Arabia's shipment is only going to increase. And here's the thing. Interestingly, in 2017, back then, I wrote an article describing how Saudi Arabia is seeing the writing on the wall as far as the shift in the global order. What is one to make, for example, out of the King Salman's 2017 trip to Asia, in which he stopped in China? So the answer basically is that the kingdom worries about the economic and security impact of the inevitable shift in global geopolitical order. Though I am not surprised at all at this visit when it took place back then, 2017, given the fact that Saudi Arabia is reassessing its economic and security priorities to secure its interest. I found it unusual that the Saudi king will visit China first before the United States, because it has been customary for Saudi Arabia Saudi king that is, to officially visit the newly elected US president at the White House first before he goes to any other country. So you can just see the trend where things are headed. So international relations are based on respecting interests in a convergent, equitable, and balanced manner. And a violation by either side of the rules of an alliance relations will force the other party to take steps to protect its interests. Therefore, any US decisions to generate pressure on Saudi Arabia must include in its calculation the possibility of the Saudi reaction or retaliation. So here's my conclusion for you. It is new thinking now is emerging in both Saudi Arabia and the US. And their citizens are seeing the reality for what it is and seeking a path forward to achieve their needs and dreams. The alarm clock is set for a wake-up call to truly place the US-Saudi relations under the microscope of reality, which is leading to the conclusion that even long-lasting relationships will eventually come to an end, sooner or later. As always, remember, geopolitics impact the global order in more ways than one. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.